Hello and welcome. This is You Should Know, Optometry and S.C.C.O. I'm Dr. Ann Munroe, Director of Admissions here at the Southern California College of Optometry.
And I'm Eryn Kraning. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions.
We're going to talk to you today about the interview process. There's something right up front you should know about the interview process, and that's that it's intentionally sneaky. Okay? It has two underlying themes I should say, and that there are questions that interviewers would love to ask you, but it's not appropriate. But they're going to be looking for that information in every answer you give to every question. So what are those two underlying themes you should know about? First of all, are you doctor material? Are you going to be the kind of person that's going to be a good doctor? Are you one of us is what the interview panelists are thinking. Are you a curious person who likes to solve problems, and do you like working with people? Are you willing to be a lifelong learner? And do you have emotional intelligence? All of these things are very important qualities to being a good doctor, all right? And the other underlying theme is this. Do you have the motivation it takes to get through this program? I actually think that this is the thing that's the most on the mind of the interviewing staff, is that, the interviewing panelists, is that they're looking for the motivation, the fire in your belly. Everybody's going to laugh that knows me because I love to use that term. Is that one of those arcane references? We're here together.
It still works.
Okay.
It still works.
So we're looking for the motivation that's going to take to get you through a tough program, okay?
So the interview can seem pretty complicated, but what's the most fundamental explanation that you can give to us to kind of help describe what the interview entails?
The most fundamental explanation of what does the interview look like, the anatomy of the interview, it has three, what we'll call sections, and you can kind of feel them as they shift gears almost and go in and out of the sections. Your interview lasts between 45 to 50 minutes, and the largest portion of that time, I'd say almost like a full half an hour, 35 minutes, is devoted to the very first part of it, and that is who you are. I want to get to know you, okay? The middle part of it is why S.C.C.O, and really they want to know why, any optometry program. How are you investigating the schools? How are you considering the programs you're looking at? And then the last part is the wrap-up. We'll call that the wrap-up, which contains, information. They're going to ask final questions about you, and if you have any questions for them, all right? The first question, the section is about you, is how did you decide in optometry as a career? I watched a lot of interviews, and I can guarantee the very first question they're going to ask you is, why do you want to be an optometrist, all right? If you know you're going to be asked a specific question in the interview, I would take every painstaking methods to make sure you have a really dynamic answer to that opening question. And it really is the first question they always ask. I always say you should get a speech together like Martin Luther King's I Got a Dream. And it's not I Got a Dream.
I have a dream.
Well, you get the picture. So, how do you put a speech together that talks about how much you love optometry? Of course, it's got to have your shadowing experience peppered all through it. I mean, how can you go on and on about how much you love optometry if you haven't shadowed enough? So it's very, very important to have a well-developed story in your shadowing.
Another aspect that they might ask you about, another kind of general category, is community service. If you want to be a doctor and you want to be a good one, you're going to be someone who cares about people. So your free time activities really need to reflect that. So your community service can be related to anything, but you need to make sure that you do have some.
This next category, I call it civic responsibility, for lack of a better term, but it's like you're going to have ethical responsibilities to your patients to dispense the best care possible, but also you're going to have accountability and responsibility to your profession as a whole. And this is kind of this area, this category they're getting into here. Optometry has only been around since the turn of the century, in the early 1900s. And organized medicine, has been around since the early 1700s. Why do I make that distinction? They got like a 200-year jump on us. Optometry is a relatively young profession. And when we came on the scene, as we increase, and it continues to happen, as we increase our scope of practice laws, it has to be hammered out in the courts, meaning we have to go in and we've had to kind of carve our whole profession out of medicine almost. And it's been a tough battle. One of the favorite questions in this category is optometry is known as a legislated profession. Do you know why that's so? And it fits in this category in that optometrists had to get all those laws changed and all that had to be done in the court system. So are we looking for optometry students that are well-spoken, well-written, have leadership roles? Yes, we are, and that's kind of this whole category.
Another area that's kind of related to this but is also separate that they might ask about is how is optometry related to other healthcare fields? How is that interaction? So what would you say to that?
Yeah, that's exactly. She's got a good point. These two categories are closely related. But just for you to know, traditionally optometry has been, so even when I graduated in the late 70s. Most of my classmates, we went into solo practice. In the late 70s, optometrists, we were not recognized as physicians by the federal government, which we are now, so we didn't have the same status within the medical community. But that has all changed, especially in California as recently as the early 90s. And so we just want you to understand that, as you work in the healthcare system with your patients, you're going to be working with other practitioners to organize or even orchestrate their care. So, that's kind of, for you to understand, that role. And optometry, as a result, has an emerging role in U.S. healthcare delivery. What do I mean by that? Is that each year we get our scope of practice laws widened state to state. Optometrists are taking on more responsibility, practicing medicine, using lasers, all kinds of services that were traditionally, reserved only for medical doctors, ophthalmology, but now optometry is doing that. And we just want you to know that and be proud of that as our history, because it's a fairly current history. And so,
as a side note to that, a lot of people ask me, well, optometry, isn't it going to become obsolete because there's laser eye surgery and all these different things that take away the need for glasses and contact lenses? And that's just a small portion of what happens. I mean, optometrists do the front and back end of laser eye surgery care. So that's an exciting thing as well that connects with different areas of the profession.
Yeah, I like to tell students, optometry students, hopefuls, that you're getting in on the ground floor of something. Optometry is just busting wide open. When I graduated in the late 70s, we couldn't even dilate pupils. Imagine that. And now, optometrists, not only are you dilating pupils, meaning you can do the diagnostic procedures to look for disease, but now you're treating ocular disease. And it's crazy because it's so exciting to see how, the laws are changing in every state, and optometrists, our scope of practice is just widening at almost an exponential rate. So it's really, really exciting. Why don't you talk about this last one about time and stress? We call this category kind of like stress and time management, and why we think it's important.
Well, one thing I want to mention in step with this is that if you make it to the interview process, your file is actually closed. Mm-hmm. We know that your academics are strong enough to have qualified you to get to this kind of second round. So we know that you're smart enough. We know that you can handle the academics of the program, but if you can't manage your time and your stress, then it's not going to matter how smart you are, is the bottom line. So they're not going to come out and ask you, hey, how are you managing stress? But they're going to ask something that's kind of coming in the back door, wanting to get to that question. So if they were to ask you, looking at your CV in your file, so you played tennis in high school or in college, tell me about that. They don't really care if you made it to the top. They don't want to know what your trophy looked like.
About tennis.
Yeah, they don't really care about that. They want to know how you manage the academics with your sports and all of your different itineraries that come along with that. So that's a great chance to just share with them, well, obviously there's a lot that goes into it and it's a competitive sport, but I was able to manage my time by utilizing tutors or by studying while I was driving on the road or whatever, but just letting them know that you can handle that wasn't something that was a deal breaker for your academics.
Yeah, going to optometry school, professional school, it's a jam-packed program, and so we know when students struggle here a little bit academically, it's not like Eryn said, it's not because they're not smart enough, but usually it's because they struggle with either time management or stress management. Optometry school is interesting. You probably think, take a typical undergrad institution. I mean, you could have a paper bag on your head and sit out in the lecture hall, and as long as you came to class and took the test, and the teacher doesn't have to know you from Adam. But here at this program, you are working in a whole different capacity with faculty. I always draw the analogy that optometry school would be like on orientation day if we gave all of our students brand new violins and cases and passed them out one by one and said, now I know none of you have ever played the violin before, but before you get out of here, I'm going to stand over you. I'm going to make you, learn how to practice the violin. You're going to have to practice it. You're going to have to do it on live patients, and it's stressful. And I almost say that optometry school is like violin.
You have to practice violin on live patients.
I know, everybody gets that wrong.
That's
okay.
audiology.
Okay, well, right. I think, am I screwing up my word picture? She knows I like to use word pictures. Okay. Oh, that's an inside joke. We'll tell you about that later. Okay, no, but no, I say this because that's kind of what optometry school is like. It's stressful because you have to, you're going to have to learn how to do procedures on patients. Faculty are going to work with you to teach you to use instrumentation you've never used before. You're going to have to practice. You're going to have to go live. You're going to be timed to make sure you're proficient in how you do the test. So it's like violin lessons. So that's why I use that analogy. She's laughing at me. So anyway, so if you have a way that you manage your time and stress, make sure you can articulate it. And what do I mean? In other words, get it down in an explainable version so it doesn't look like you just thought it up right there on the spot and explain it. If you use your iPhone to manage your time and your schedule, say I used to do it on my iPhone, or how you manage stress, examples might be, I hang out with my friends, I'm a spiritual person, I pray to manage it. Whatever you do to manage stress, is you really want to have an answer, a viable answer because this is getting more and more play all the time because in all of student affairs, we talk about this a lot, how students deal with the demands, the rigors of a really demanding program. You've got a lot of help here, but it's going to take a lot of keen scheduling and of your time to make sure you're successful in the program.